Randy did not head directly east as planned, but instead he veered south, likely in an attempt to navigate around the adverse weather, possibly using the roads below as a guide. While on the plane, the performers spent their time talking, though Patsy wasn't talking too much. She was sick. She was sneezing. She was coughing, and she was tending to a runny nose. The cold cabin and the cigarette smoke around her were making her feel worse. In this enclosed space, the concentration of carbon monoxide was building up to harmful levels. The levels of carbon monoxide exposure were impairing the pilot's cognitive functions, such as attention, judgment, and decision-making, which are critical for piloting an aircraft. Symptoms of carbon monoxide exposure include headaches, fatigue, dizziness, and nausea, all of which impair a pilot's ability to operate the aircraft safely. He flew through Missouri, and after about an hour he landed in Rogers, Arkansas to recheck the weather and refuel. At that time, reports from Little Rock, approximately 193 statute miles to the southeast, indicated conditions of rain and sleet. 15 minutes later, at 3:30 p.m., the aircraft descended once more. Randy didn't speak much, as he focused on navigating through the embrace of turbulent skies, the shroud of low visibility, and sporadic sheets of rain pouring down on and around them. At 4:58 p.m., Randy bridged the silence when his voice carried over the airwaves to the Tennessee Flight Service Station in Dyersburg, Tennessee. He communicated with Specialist Leroy Neal, revealing their position as a mere 5 miles southwest of Dyersburg. As he threaded the path from Kansas City to Nashville, Leroy Neal's reply, laden with a grim forecast for Nashville, prompted Randy to seek refuge in Dyersburg. The Dyersburg airport, under the watchful eye of William E. Brace, extended its welcome at 5:15 p.m. Brace, the heart and soul behind the airport's operations, ushered the airplane to a stop before the terminal. He then guided the passengers toward the promise of a warm meal at the restaurant. Patsy, clad in a striking red pantsuit, sat at the table with Copas and Hawkshaw. They ordered iced tea to drink and shrimp to eat. Within the solemn confines of the flight service station, Leroy Neal outlined a grim forecast to Randy. He painted a picture of the daunting journey ahead. He described a relentless front sweeping across Tennessee, heralding a tempest of adverse weather conditions, a veil of clouds hanging low at 900 feet, visibility reduced to a mere 5 miles, the air punctuated by the soft patter of rain and the swirl of fog, all against a backdrop of winds lashing out at 20 knots, with furious gusts reaching 31 knots, causing severe turbulence. The flying conditions were barely marginal, with low visibility in the overcast skies that would conceal hazards like hills and radio towers. Furthermore, the weather in Nashville, which was about an hour's flight away, fell below visual flight rules, minimums, and was expected to worsen before it got any better. Leroy Neal underscored the peril with a special advisory, warning of turbulence that could range from moderate to severe, a tangible threat in the diminishing light of late afternoon. Randy inquired about sunset time, approximately 5:56 p.m., and learned that the overcast conditions would lead to earlier darkness. After all, Randy was not authorized to transport passengers after sunset. Despite all the dire warnings, Randy was still looking for any ray of hope to encourage him to continue onward. So he went to the nearest phone and he called his wife. Her response, according to him, was a beacon of light. Nashville was bathed in unexpected sunshine, suggesting the storm's retreat and heralding improved weather conditions. He eagerly shared this glimmer of good news with his passengers. Patsy's response, imbued with both solidarity and deference, echoed among them when she said to him, "If you want to stay, we stay, and if you want to go, we go." They were all eager to get home, and Randy was eager to get them home. This circumstance is often referred to as the get-home-itis syndrome, where pilots try to reach their destination at all costs. Randy then instructed everyone to prepare for departure. He then returned to the flight service station, buoyed by the promise of Nashville sunshine. William E. Brace had just finished refueling the aircraft, pouring in 27 gallons of aviation fuel. He wiped clean the ashtrays that were filled with cigarette ashes. He also conducted a thorough check of the oil levels and then dashed back to the office just in time to catch Randy revealing to the bookkeeper, "I just talked to my wife, and she said the sun just broke out in Nashville. So we're going on." Specialist Leroy Neal, the voice of cautious wisdom, hinted at the transient nature of such clearings. Despite brief moments of sunlight piercing the day, the looming reality was that the storm around Nashville had not truly dissipated. The fleeting sunshine witnessed by Randy's wife, a deceptive interlude in the tempest pause, is what seasoned aviators dubbed a sucker hole, a beguiling trap, offering false promises of safe passage. Yet, the call of this illusionary haven proved too enchanting to resist. William Brace advised Randy to postpone his trip, emphasizing that the weather conditions were unfavorable for a pilot without an instrument rating, particularly for a night flight over an unlit rural area. Brace then proposed lending his car to Randy for the drive to Nashville and offered to pilot the plane back the following day himself. How in the world do you not take advantage of an offer like that from an experienced aviator who is doing everything he can to convince you not to fly? However, Randy was resolute in his decision to proceed. With concern lacing his voice, Brace tried once more when he said, "Why don't you just stay here tonight?" But Randy, fueled by determination, responded, "I've already come this far. We'll be there before you know it." Randy then confidently added that should the weather turn treacherous, he'd simply reverse course back to Dyersburg. He then asked if the lights would be on along the runway, and he was reassured that they would be. He then settled the bill for the 27 gallons of fuel he had purchased. The distance between Dyersburg, Tennessee and Nashville, Tennessee is approximately 146 statute miles. The flight in a small aircraft traveling at an average speed of 170 miles per hour would take roughly 49 minutes under normal flight conditions. If they would have simply driven by car, they would have been home in 3 hours or less. At 6:07, in the dwindling light, Randy assisted Patsy into the left rear seat of the aircraft. She was followed by Cowboy Copas, who sat beside her. Randy then maneuvered himself across the co-pilot's seat, securing his place. Hawkshaw then climbed in and sat in the navigator's seat. Randy awakened the 250 horsepower engine to full roar, a necessary force given the craft's burden. 4 souls, their luggage and instruments and other equipment, and the plane's fuel, tipping the scales 40 pounds beyond its sanctioned heft. A firm pull on the yoke, and they ascended. The aircraft laboring against the evening's turbulent embrace, aiming into a foreboding tapestry of clouds. Randy steered into a tempestuous whirlwind, a vortex of fog, rain, low-hanging clouds, and whipping winds. A daunting trial even for an experienced aviator. To Randy's side was his logbook, a silent testament to having just 160 hours in flight time. It was 6:15 p.m. when he veered his small plane into the heart of a merciless storm. "15 minutes later, at 6:30 p.m., as twilight deepened into night, a gentleman named Sam C. Ward was busy at work at his mining company's office, nestled 4 miles west of Camden, Tennessee. Outside, a tempest raged, its howls punctuated by a barely discernible sound that sliced through the storm's fury. He thought, could that be an airplane? Nah. The very thought seemed implausible, given the inclement weather. Ward's apprehension stemmed from his vast aviation experience. A seasoned aviator since 1940, he had contributed his expertise as a U.S. Air Corps instructor during World War II. He also managed a crop dusting operation and run a flight school. His credentials as a certified commercial pilot were underscored by a logbook boasting over 10,000 hours aloft. Up above, in the plane's cockpit, Randy peered through the windshield. The outside world reduced to a murky luminescence as the plane's landing lights scattered off enveloping clouds, disoriented by the featureless expanse. Randy and his companions were gripped by a bewildering dizziness. With no horizon in sight and untrained in instrument navigation, Randy failed to notice the subtle tilt of the aircraft into a fatal spiral. Patsy was coughing into her left hand, while her right hand reached for Cowboy's. She was frightened. Cowboy extinguished his cigarette. He held Patsy's hand with his left, and he gripped his seat with his right. "Everything all right up there, Randy?" Cowboy asked the pilot. Randy nodded to assure his passengers. But he knew the peril he put them all in. Patsy sneezed. Her eyes teared. "You need to land this bird, Randy," Hawkshaw said. Randy nodded again. He knew he needed to land. But how? He couldn't see anything in any direction. The air's howl intensified as the descent quickened. In a desperate bid to regain control, Randy pulled back on the yoke, inadvertently exacerbating the spiral. The force of his actions only deepened the dive. The sensation of plummeting manifesting as a visceral dread. Down below, compelled by concern, Sam C. Ward stepped out into the blustery night. Veiled by the storm's embrace, he discerned the sound of a light aircraft skimming just above the treetops. Perhaps no more than 300 feet above the ground. Though the plane remained unseen, its engine's steady thrum suggested a passage through the night sky. But then, suddenly, the engine's pitch climbed. A white light then dove earthward at a 45-degree angle, hinting at imminent peril. Back in the airplane, Patsy and Cowboy squeezed each other's hands tight. Hawkshaw's heart was beating fast as he said, "You need to get us home, Randy." This time, Randy didn't nod. He didn't have time to. Abruptly, the aircraft emerged from the cloud cover into a headlong dive. Its descent arrested too late as the propeller shattered and detached as it cut through a tall oak tree. Right wing hit another oak tree, causing the airplane to flip upside down. The immediate and overwhelming nature of the blunt force trauma due to the high-speed impact of hitting the tree and their tumbling within the craft caused severe head injuries, including traumatic brain injuries, chest and abdominal injuries, leading to immediate loss of function in critical organs. Broken bones and fractures, lacerations, and internal bleeding were fatal and caused the instant deaths of everyone on that plane as it nosedived into the ground at approximately 280 miles per hour. Given the reported conditions of the crash site and the extent of the wreckage, it was clear that the aircraft experienced a catastrophic impact with the terrain. Such an impact subjected the bodies of the passengers to extreme forces. From the ground, Sam C. Ward heard the muffled thud of impact, followed by an eerie silence. In a swift chain of communication, he urgently reached out to Camden police dispatcher Jerry Pfeiffer. Pfeiffer, in turn, swiftly notified Tennessee Highway Patrol Trooper Troy Odell. Odell then quickly forwarded the crucial details to the county sheriff. Together, the sheriff and trooper dedicated several hours to meticulously navigating the labyrinth of secluded back roads. Yet their efforts yielded no discoveries. As night deepened, a dedicated civil defense team, alongside the Camden Police Department and the Tennessee Highway Patrol, embarked on an exhaustive search within the treacherous confines of Sandy Point at 11:30 p.m. However, the search was severely hampered by the relentless assault of stormy weather, the enveloping darkness, and the unforgiving, rugged landscape. Their valiant efforts persisted through the shroud of night. Jerry Pfeiffer said that night was rainy, kind of foggy and misty, with the wind blowing and streaks of lightning ripping across the sky. By the break of dawn, a thick, ethereal mist enshrouded the forest, casting a veil of mystery and further complicating the search for cotton farmer William Jeffrey Hollingsworth and his son Jenners, who laboriously weaved through the dense underbrush near Old Stage Road, while battling the elements, searching for the site of the crash. At around 6 a.m., as the first light of day crept over the horizon, they ascended a modest hillock and cautiously descended its far side. Suddenly, their advance was halted by a chilling discovery. A segment of a yellow airplane wing suspended ominously in a treetop. Beneath them lay a scene of unspeakable horror. A sodden crater 6 feet in depth gave way to a 300-foot expanse, littered with the twisted wreckage of machinery and the tragic remnants of human lives. The sight overwhelmed them. William would later say, "I nearly had a nervous breakdown when I ran down and saw the bodies." When trying to account for the 4 bodies, he and others would later admit that there wasn't enough left of any of them to even count. He later said, "I happened to look down, and I was standing on a piece of flesh. I got to looking around, and all there was flesh. Just pieces. We found more of Patsy Cline than anyone else." You see, when the plane crashed, it hit a big oak tree, and it bounced off into the ground. And the impact tore the occupants to little pieces. There wasn't even anything left to autopsy. All that remained of Patsy, that was recognizable, was part of her back shoulder, her right arm, and part of the back of her head. That was because her torso was wedged under a log in the forest swamp, with part of her head still attached. One of her feet was found hanging off a tree. Jenners would later say, "We're out on Old Stage Road trying to locate the plane just as it turned daylight. We looked up through the mist and fog and spotted a section of a yellow airplane wing in the top of a tree. We went down the steep hill and saw pieces of the plane scattered around a 300-foot area. There were parts of bodies on tree limbs and on the ground. Daddy started backing up from the area and told me to go call the sheriff's office." Camden Police Dispatcher Jerry Pfeiffer was one of the initial responders to the site. While walking around, he saw Patsy Cline's soft gold slipper covered with mud, broken guitars, cowboy hats, and rhinestones. The area was littered with scattered personal belongings and clothing. A white belt, inscribed with Hawkshaw Hawkins in gold letters, was found near a black and white cowboy boot. The matching boot was found almost 20 feet away, close to the shattered neck of Hawkins' guitar. A red slip, once worn by Patsy Cline, was dangling from a tree. Investigators discovered that the victims were so badly damaged that identification was only possible through the IDs found in their wallets. The announcement of the crash attracted scavengers who swarmed the site, taking whatever they could as mementos of the incident. This included 3 dresses that Patsy had worn. To this day, the dresses remain unaccounted for. Word has it that a few local men even dug the engine of the airplane out of the ground and carried it off with them. Interestingly, singer-songwriter Roger Miller once claimed in an interview that he was the first person at the site of the crash. He said that he and his friend Don allegedly headed to the area at around 3:30 a.m. after hearing the news and searched for almost 2 hours before coming across the wreckage. He once told a reporter, "An officer asked me to lead the way as fast as I could. I ran through the woods screaming their names, through the brush and the trees, and I came up over this little rise. Oh my God, there they were. I walked up to it and wanted to turn back. It was ghastly. That's the only way to describe it. The plane had crashed nose down." But yet, in another interview, he said he had been with Charlie Dick, Patsy Cline's husband, late into the night, and he drove to try to find the site while Dick stayed at home with his children. In that interview, Roger Miller said he got there in the morning and screamed at the scavengers who were collecting ghastly souvenirs in the hours before authorities secured the scene, around 1 p.m. on March 6. And so those are two different stories that Roger Miller told, and I'm sure there are probably others out there as well, so you can make your own decision about which one of those you want to believe, if either. In later years, Camden police dispatcher Jerry Pfeiffer proudly admitted to collecting a few artifacts from the scene. Among the finds that he was showing off were a cufflink that he said belonged to Hawkins, several guitar strings, and fragments of the aircraft. Before looters, including those from law enforcement, could take nearly everything, some of the relics retrieved from the crash site included Patsy Cline's cigarette lighter and her wristwatch, the latter of which played a role in establishing the time of her death at 6:20 p.m. The death of Patsy Cline was first reported by the news media following the plane crash. During this era, television, radio, and newspapers were the primary sources for news for the public. And so the news of the crash that killed Patsy Cline, along with Hawkshaw Hawkins and Cowboy Copas and manager Randy Hughes, disseminated through these channels. The news of the discovery of the crash site and the confirmation of the deaths of all on board spread quickly, sending shockwaves through the country music community and the entire nation. The loss of such prominent figures in a single accident was a profound tragedy and marked a somber moment in the history of country music. Patsy Cline's widow had this to say: "When that plane went down, Cowboy Copas was the biggest star on board. Usually today, Patsy seems to get top billing. But Patsy was a big fan of Copas and Hawk, and they were stars. Everybody on that plane was important to the music business, and all of them were top dogs." In the days and weeks following their deaths, their music saw a resurgence in popularity, with fans seeking to connect with their legacy through their recordings. Their passing was a pivotal moment in country music history, marking the loss of some of its most influential and beloved figures. Hawkshaw Hawkins was laid to rest on March 8, 1963, just 3 days after the tragic plane crash that took his life. The funeral services for Hawkins took place in Madison, Tennessee, drawing a large crowd of fans, friends, and fellow country music artists to pay their respects. And the same could be said for Cowboy Copas. And Randy Hughes was also soon laid to rest. The remains of Patsy Cline were transported back to her birthplace in Winchester, West Virginia. There, on the serene Sunday of March 10, 1963, she was laid to eternal rest in a modest burial site within the peaceful embrace of Shenandoah Memorial Park. The funeral attracted thousands of mourners, including fans, friends, and fellow performers, indicating the widespread impact of her death on the country music community and her fan base. Her gravesite, marked by a bronze plaque, has since become a place of pilgrimage for fans wishing to honor her memory and legacy. The Civil Aviation Board conducted a thorough investigation into the tragic accident, attributing the cause directly to Randy's decision to embark on the flight under perilous conditions. The conclusion was stark. Randy, lacking in experience, had ventured into a storm beyond his navigational capabilities, a decision marked by a fatal overestimation of his flying skills. The Air Safety Foundation's examination meticulously highlighted the alarming frequency of Comanche aircraft mishaps, enveloped in treacherous weather, specifically under the veil of instrument meteorological conditions. The scrutiny revealed that Comanche single-engine crafts suffered a crash incidence double that of their counterparts when navigating through inclement weather. The investigation said that the craft had crashed on a wooded, swampy area about 5 miles west of Camden. Inspection of the wreckage disclosed that the aircraft was intact and the engine was developing substantial power at initial impact with trees. There was no evidence of pre-impact failure or malfunction. Post-mortem examination of the pilot disclosed nothing that could have been a factor in the accident. The weather at Camden was reported as ceiling 500 feet, visibility 5 miles. In the wake of Hawkshaw's passing, his last recorded track, Lonesome 77203, soared to the pinnacle of the charts, claiming the #1 spot for 4 consecutive weeks, a tribute to his enduring talent. Cowboy Copas' enduring legacy is a testament to his talent and the timeless appeal of his music, which continues to captivate fans and influence artists. Patsy Cline's legacy is one of enduring influence and groundbreaking achievements in the realm of country music and beyond. Her remarkable contributions to music were recognized with numerous accolades, including her groundbreaking induction into the Country Music Hall of Fame in 1973, marking her as the first female solo artist to achieve this honor. In 1995, she was awarded a Grammy for Lifetime Achievement, a testament to her indelible impact on music. Her spirit and artistry live on, immortalized in the hearts and minds of everyone she met and who love her music, which will live on forever. As the epitaph on her grave states, "Death cannot kill what never dies." And that, my fellow time travelers and strange historians, is the true story of the tragic death of Patsy Cline, Cowboy Copas, Hawkshaw Hawkins, and their pilot Randy Hughes. So, what do you think of Patsy Cline, Cowboy Copas, and Hawkshaw Hawkins, and how they died? Are you a fan of their music? What would you have done if you were in their circumstance at the time? Do you think the pilot, Randy Hughes, was totally at fault? Or do you think he may have suffered from carbon monoxide poisoning? And if so, does that relinquish any other responsibility from him? By the way, I do not know who took some of the photos that I've shown in the show, so if you do, will you kindly let me know so I can respectfully give them the credit that they deserve. At this point, I'd like to thank you for joining me on this time travel adventure. Kindly remember to like, share, and subscribe, and hit the notification bell because there will be more shows like this one, and I hope you check those out too. Please check out the links below to learn how to support my research and productions. Specifically, I'd really appreciate it if you could become a member of my channel and or join me on Patreon. You could also leave a super thanks in the comments below. And there is a donation link, so you can make a one-time donation or ongoing, which will help me continue making productions such as this. Kindly be kind to all non-human animals and please don't eat them. They don't like that. Remember, for the benefit of compassion for all living things and their own health, brilliant people throughout history chose a plant-based diet. And please do yourself a favor and go to a local shelter and adopt a cat or a dog or both. You and they will be very glad that you did. Until next time, I wish you safe travels on all your journeys.
I dreamed I was there in hillbilly heaven. Oh, what a beautiful sight. Last night I dreamed I went to hillbilly heaven. You know who greeted me at the gate? The old cowboy philosopher himself, Will Rogers. He said to me, Tex, the boss of the riders up here has kind of asked me to show you around. Right over yonder's a few of your old compadres. My, was I glad to see him. Hank Williams and Johnny Horton and Hawkshaw Hawkins, Jack Anglin and Randy Hughes, Rod Brassfield, Cowboy Copas. I dreamed I was there in hillbilly heaven. Oh, what a beautiful sight. He introduced me to Wiley Post, and he showed me the Hall of Fame with all the gold guitars and fiddles hanging on the wall. Then he said, Tex, step this way. More of your friends I know you won't see. They're waiting for you. There they were, standing side by side, smiling at me. Patsy Cline and Texas Ruby, Carl Farr of the Sons of the Pioneers, Little Joe Carson of Texas, Merle Lindsay, Jim Reeves and Hank Martin, Ira Leuven, Wiley Walker, the Delmore brothers, all the rest. I met all the stars in hillbilly heaven. Oh, what a star-studded night. Then I asked him who else he expected within the next, say, 100 years. He handed me a large book covered with stardust. Will Rogers called it the Big Tally Book. In it were many names, and each name was branded in pure gold. I began to read some of them as I turned the pages. Red Foley, Ernest Tubb, Gene Autry, Roy Acuff, and Eddie Arnold, Porter Wagner, and Sonny James, the Wilburn brothers, Loretta Lynn, and Ferlin Husky, Farron Young, Minnie Pearl, Johnny Cash, Tex Ritter. Oh, that's when I woke up. And I'm sorry I did, because I dreamed I was there in hillbilly heaven. Oh, what a beautiful sight.